So we got news that China is retaliating back on those US tariffs, and we're seeing as I speak right now the US stock market, the S&P 500, Nasdaq moving up higher. So why the positive sentiment in the stock market, especially on negative news from China? Well, let's go over this article here. I'll link it in the description so you could read up on it. It's titled China Launches Limited Tariffs After Trump Imposes Sweeping New Levies. China imposed targeted tariffs on U.S. imports on Tuesday and put several companies, including Google, on notice for possible sanctions in a measured response to sweeping duties on Chinese imports imposed by President Donald Trump. Beijing's limited reply to Trump's imposition of a 10% tariff on all Chinese imports underscored the attempt by Chinese policymakers to engage Trump in talks to avert an outright trade war between the world's two largest economies. So what's basically going on here is that the expectation of Trump putting 10% tariffs on Chinese goods, the expectation was that China would retaliate harder, and the retaliation would be worse than expected. But it wasn't. It wasn't as bad as expected. So what happened here? What occurred? Right? We got a soft reaction from China, which basically was looked at in a positive way. Now, we heard and we know that today China and the US are going to be talking to each other about this trade agreement and about these tariffs. So we could, there is a chance that maybe some positive developments could come out of this. And it does look like China wants to do something about this situation. Now, Trump also suspended 25% tariffs on Mexico and Canada and agreed to put a 30-day pause on basically those tariffs on those two countries, which also created positive sentiment that we saw yesterday in the equity markets. Now, China, going back to China, they said it would be imposing export controls on some metals, including tungsten, that are critical for electronics, military equipment, and solar panels. And 10% duty, the 10% duty China announced on electric trucks imported from the U.S. could also apply to Elon Musk's Cybertruck, which could affect Tesla. China's new tariffs will not take effect until Monday, giving Washington and Beijing time to try to seek a deal with Chinese policymakers, have indicated they hope to reach a deal with Trump as China's domestic demand sputters. So China is under issue with its own economy and has demand issues as well. And we're seeing a soft tone in the start here with China, which is basically sending a positive sentiment in the equity markets. And the fact that those tariffs don't come into play from a week from now basically gives room for US and China to negotiate and talk. So this is basically looking positive for the equity markets, but if things don't go well, this can change quite rapidly. Like we saw previously with Trump when he was president before, the tariff wars that we saw between US and China, the trade wars that we saw, basically caused the equity markets to be very volatile, and we saw quite the swings in the equity markets. So far right now there's positive development, which is a good sign, but hey, anything can change drastically, and especially with China, eyeing Google and US tech names, this can definitely put a hold on any appreciation in the tech sector, especially Nasdaq. So as things develop, it's going to be interesting to see how these things play out. And for now, things are looking positive, and we'll have to wait for a month to see, okay, what happens to all these developments, right? If we do get something positive from China, what happens next month, right, in March? Do we completely let go of all this trade war? Are things going to go well between Mexico Mexico and U.S. and with U.S. and Canada and U.S. and China, and let's also not forget the European Union, which also Europe was basically saying that we are ready to work with Trump, right? We're ready to work with the U.S. So very positive, it's a good positive start here, and but again, in a month from now, things can drastically change and bring that volatility in, which could send the equity markets plunging down lower. Now, another thing is China mentioned that they would put tariffs on a tax on U.S. oil, which makes up about a very small percentage. Just over 5% of China's LNG imports come from the United States. So that brought also oil prices down lower, hinting towards less demand. And that's also being taken as a positive thing, because if oil prices are lower demand, that means lower inflation. So there's no problem here. Hence why we're also seeing the move up in the equity markets. So, again, things can change drastically here, and we'll have to continue to monitor. The other thing I would also want to point out is that this is, coming out from Reuters, right? The mainstream media out there. What we want to hear is from Trump himself, monitoring his social media account, the Truth Social account that he, created. What does he say about all of this? And if positive developments come out from him, definitely we could see the equity markets move up higher. And if this continues to be a trend, guess what? We could see all-time highs all over again. And if not, then we go back to selling fear and the markets plunging and bond markets moving up higher, gold moving up higher, and etc. etc. So anyways, let me know what you guys think. Leave a comment below, subscribe, hit the like button, bell icon to be notified next video, and I'll see you guys around. Cheers, bye.